Hey everybody, Braden here, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be covering the first tournament game that I have played of this year, 2022. I am finally getting to them after having covered all of the tournaments before my long break. Well, I am playing against Noah in the first round, and let's just say he is stronger than his unrated rating appears to be. He had a pretty good performance this tournament, and he should have crushed me. I believe last time I checked, his bullet was something like 2,700 on chess.com, which is absolutely insane. So I got lucky in this game, and that's all. That's all we'll say here. So let's go in. B3, knight f6, bishop b2, and g6. So this is something I played against b3 before. I only had b3 once before, I believe, and I just played this like knight f6 g6 setup because it's just very easy to play. It just, if you don't know what to do against something that's not e4, go for a King's Indian setup. It's pretty good advice, honestly. Takes, and c4 here. So I played bishop g7, which is fine. I would say that d5 is probably the way to equalize nowadays, though. C takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen d8. This is just really comfortable. We'll play bishop g7. We could play c6. They'll get a little bit of a center here, but realistically, it doesn't matter too much. So I think it's just a game, so that's good. I'm yawning a bit, don't mind me. So yeah, instead c4 was played because I played c4, bishop g7, knight c3 was played because I played bishop g7. And then I castled here. Instead, maybe c6 d5 was something to at least consider, or something like f5. But no, I didn't consider these moves. I just castled instead. And I think I lost my chance to get in this d5, which is unfortunate, as I think that was the way to equalize. So g3, d6, bishop g2, and c6. So now my idea is I'm just going to control the 5th rank with my pawns, as you can see here, controlling the 5th rank with my pawns. And the strategy here is I'm going to be giving up space and hoping that I can get counterattacks later on. This is normally what's done in the King's Indian, but the biggest problem is there's no pawn breaks for me to make, so I just have less space, which is very unfortunate. One thing I'd love to do is just trade off especially one of these two pieces, and then I think I might even be fine. Yeah, so my opponent played e3, knight d7, and knight ge2. I played f5, just open up my bishop, and they castled. Knight f6 and d4. And funnily enough, this bishop actually is pretty bad. Even though these two maybe look comparable, it's really not. Even though this bishop looks, maybe even it looks worse just because of c6 and b7. The truth is, this bishop's just biting at granite because d4 is just so overprotected. There's just no real way to get at it. And yeah, I would confidently say that I would prefer white here, and that I am just slightly worse. So I played rook e8, just the normal developing move. Maybe I'll play knight e4 at some point. Maybe I won't. Rook c1. And then queen to a5, which is honestly a little strange. So my idea was a little silly. It was queen a5, bishop d7, rook d8, bishop back to c8, and then maybe like queen back to c7 or something. And the idea here was that, okay, what's this rook doing? Do I want it on the a file, or would I rather have it on d8? So I was just looking for a funny maneuver here. This was just silly. So instead, I think the move a5 makes a lot more sense, trying to gain space on this side of the board, the queen side. And just a sample variation here, queen c2, bishop d7. And if knight f4, they ever go for this plan, which was played in the game, as we'll see in a little bit, I do have moves like g5, followed by h5, bishop h6. And I can just treat this like a King's Indian, which is actually pretty nice to see here. It's surprising that I can go for this, but it is possible. So instead, what happened in the game was Queen c2, or Queen a5, Queen c2, Bishop d7, Knight f4, and no, I did not go for this g5 move because it did not look good. I instead played Rook a d8. I wasn't really thinking here, just tried to make moves, bring things to the center, play Bishop c8. Luckily, everything is playing a role in the center, kind of. But it's actually a little bit artificial here, which is not really that great. My opponent plays another great move, Knight d3. I tried to jump in immediately with Knight e4. I think that was the right call. I'm just trying to define the center a bit. For example, if they were to go takes and then takes, move their knight, let's just say even to g5 here, I would be more than happy, especially as a King's Indian player, just to play g5 here and then f5. Go bring my rook back to f8. Go for some f4. Just try to find like a pawn break to make and try to find some play to have had here. But no, that was not given to me as an option. My opponent played b4, which was very annoying. Of course, I would pray for something else, literally anything else, like h3, for example, where the second there's trades like this, I don't even think I'm worse anymore from a practical sense, mainly because there's actually a tactical move here with c5. This looks like it just either wins a pawn or gives them a hanging pawn structure. Like, for example, even if knight f4 and then takes, even though I have the isolated d pawn, it just cannot be attacked. Even if they get the d5 square, I don't know how much I care about it. And now that I'm looking at this a little bit deeper, knight d5. Well, let's just say b6. My idea was b6, knight d5, bishop e6, but maybe it's still not clear. This was just like a passing thought, anyways. But I didn't look at this in the game. But the whole point is maybe c5 doesn't have to be played. I was just trying to be fancy there and just show that even a move like c5, which looks like it breaks positional values there, could still be good. But realistically, don't need to do it here. I think most people would be very happy to make that trade, because now the space disadvantage just means less with queens and a pair of minor pieces off the board. Let's get back to the game. Knight e4, b4, queen a3. So I noticed that queen a6, there's going to be like some b5 stuff. So I go queen a3, and at least if they want to continue on with their attack on the queen side, they have to go knight b1, at least for a move, which I was trying to argue was somewhat valuable, at least for me, but realistically, it's not. So that's a little unfortunate, but at the same time, it's not easy to find another plan for white. Like, it's just a good plan though, so they're kind of in luck that I'm forcing them to do something good here. Yeah, so knight b1 was played. After knight b1, I ended up playing the move queen to a6, a4, and here I realized, oh no, I'm in big boy trouble. I think there was a way to hold on here, and it was with c5, which is a little surprising here. But the whole point is we need to prevent b5 and c5 from our opponents. So yeah, just like a variation here is, let's just say d takes. I think generally we could be pretty happy about this. And then there's a funny variation with bishop takes e4, pawn takes e4, knight takes c5, where I think white's just better here, despite giving up their light square bishop, because even if we try to get something from it, let's just say queen c6, takes, queen takes e4, yeah, we just simply don't get enough, and it's not really easy to go like bishop h3 and queen g2 mate, because they do win the pawn there for it. And when they're up a pawn in an ending like this, the bishop pair means just a little bit less, because we don't really have as much. Okay, it's not true, we do have some activity, but it feels like we're poking at nothing, essentially. So, yeah, that's just one line to look at there with c5. I think another one is just b5. We're after queen b6, d takes, and it's a little bit better here. Like we're happy to have a position like this than what happened in the game, which was a4 and b6. But c5 is just such a hard move to play. But yeah, so b6, they played b5, and I think this was totally the right call. And white should have a winning position here. The whole point of b5, in my view, is it just wins control over the d5 square. Just completely wins it. And because of that, one of these knights will end up on d5, and it's going to be hard to actually contest it. So that's kind of what starts to happen in the game. Queen b7, b takes c, queen takes c, knight b4, queen d7, and then knight to c3. So, of course, the thing I don't want to do here is go knight takes c3, and then like bishop b7, and knight d5, and I can just resign and just cry myself to sleep, because this is clearly lost. Like, you don't even have to look at things from a tactical perspective or anything like that. Oh, maybe we have counterplay on certain squares. The problem is their knight is on d5. I have a pawn on d6, which is going to be a potential weakness. They could break through. They could try to break through with some sort of c5 or a5. They're just better on every side of the board. Almost, I'd say maybe we're still okay on the king side, because we have more pawns over there in g5, f4. Even though it's never going to happen, because their knight's perfectly placed to prevent f4. Yeah, white's just winning here. There's not really much more we can say about that. So yeah, instead I go bishop to b7 here, and the thing I'm hoping for is taking on e4 and then some sort of like knight d5. Obviously this would not be ideal. Then we just play something like rook e8, and I don't think we're upset at all, because after, sorry, not rook e8, rook c8, we get the open file. They move somewhere. We can play like f5, and okay, we're fine. I guess they have rook c6 here, which is a little annoying, but king h8 continues. Obviously, don't want to allow this. Takes this, some sort of this move, and d5. This would be tragic. Last move we can set up. Just one more trick in the position. It's hard to do anything that, like, you have to allow the move. Like queen c4 is fine. If h4, rook c6, looks like, there we go. You know, just showing some interesting tactics here that I'm seeing at a glance. But instead, my opponent played c5, and they're trying to just break through, and I think this is also the right call. Both moves win. Though it does also just allow complications, which was something I was a little happy about in the game, which I vividly remember, because I remember being like very miserable here, and then I saw d takes, and then queen e7, and all of a sudden, what's going on? So for example, if takes, I'm actually genuinely just happy here, because now, like, I guess there's a weakness on e4 potentially. You never really want to play f5, but it looks like we can get away with it here, so maybe it is something we want to play. And all of a sudden, it's just unclear. Plus, by the way, queen e7 takes. I should mention, actually, we can just take the knight, which was the actual idea of it. Yeah, I was just going over it too quickly. That takes, pawn takes. No, we just take the knight. See, even I fell for it now. It's been a few months since I looked at the game, but that's okay. That's okay. We're good. We're good. Okay. So anyways, they took on d8, and then they played a really interesting move here that I think is just a winner. It's c6, and I was not expecting this move. Luckily, it worked out in my favor. I'm still losing here. This is dead lost. Let's just go over it. Queen takes b4 was played. C takes b7. Bishop to e5. And I'm trying to blockade on b8 here. I think if they just take on e4, bishop b8, and then some sort of like, yeah, like king g2, like queen d6 or something. I'm not sure what to do here, honestly. I am having difficulty seeing how black defends this at all. I think there's lots of plans to continue. I like bishop to f3, maybe going for a5, trading off like those pawns, or maybe even not, maybe bringing the rook to c8 somehow, like shuffling the pieces. The problem is, because it's opposite color bishops, the opposite color bishop favors the attacker. They're up a pawn. There's queens on the board still. They need to keep queens on the board, and if they can do that, they can combine ideas of attacking me with having to, or me having to constantly just defend the pawn over and over and over and over again, which is very, very annoying. So, okay. Instead, my opponent played the move queen c8. And this is still fine. It's kind of like a one-move trick, honestly, if you think about it. Takes, they just promote, so clearly I don't do that. So I just have to defend my rook, which I do here. And then they blunder by going into a position which is actually holding for me now. This is still losing if they just like move their queen away, like queen c4. They can just pick up the pawn. Even actually maybe queen c6 is more accurate, just to keep the pawn, because queen c4 I can take on b7 there. But yeah, so they played queen takes d8, and at first it looks like this is winning. Rook c8 is playable, but I do actually have a move here. So sure, I am maybe not the happiest boy in school after rook c8, queen f8, because they can take on e4 here. But after f5, you soon realize that bishop d5 check, king g7, they're gonna just have to trade. And what I mean by not being the happiest boy in school is we're down a pawn, but it's an opposite color bishop ending, and I really don't see a easy way for them to break through. The first thing I thought of here, instead of king f1 even, maybe king f1 was actually, obviously it's all fine here. One thing I was expecting from them for a while was f4. I think they should have played that. So I played bishop g5, king d3, g5. And again, I think f4 here might be something. It's definitely not gonna be enough, but it's worth a shot to look at. For example, like h5, h4 or something, and they can try to argue that if I play h5, trying to play h4, that's the whole point of it. Because the more trades I make in a defending position, the easier it will be to hold these types of endgames. They can try to argue that they have fixed one of my pawns on light squares, and although one of their pawns is on a dark square, the color of my bishop, it cannot be attacked. This chain is way too strong. And again, this is important to mention here. And bishop f3 would even come, and that would be very bad. Just something to point out, though. So that's one line I was looking at for them. Ended up not happening. They played king d4, and I immediately played f4, because if your opponent's gonna do something like push a pawn to a square and you're really scared of it, what if you push your pawn to that square? So that's what I did. f4, g takes e4, and this is just an immediate draw, because what I can do is I can just protect one of these key squares for entry. So if they try to play e5, trying to push their pawn, which they're trying to do right now, I just go king f6, h4, h6, just get it on a dark square. I don't want to worry about it being captured ever if I play h5. Bishop c4, bishop e5 check, king d5, bishop to b8. It's important to actually note here, there is no entry square for white, despite it looking like they can play king c6. Again, so e5, I want to prevent. And then I also want to prevent king e6 or king d7. I don't care about king c6, surprisingly. I cannot stop both e5 and king c6. But after king c6, where do they go if I play king e7? It's not clear. If they go king d5, I just go back, preventing e5. So that's what happened. h5, bishop e5, bishop b5, bishop b8, bishop d7, bishop b5. I think I offered a draw. when queen takes f8 happened earlier, and then I offered a draw somewhere around here because this was just a dead draw. Maybe it was bad practice for me to offer a second draw, but to me it was just like, this was just very clearly a draw. They played on a little bit and then offered one. So again, king c6, always remede it with king e7 here, because if they get king d7, then it's actually most likely losing. f3, bishop e5, just shuffle. They end up winning the a pawn, bishop d4. They don't even, they do actually trade off the a and b pawns, but again, they're up a pawn, but this just doesn't matter. This is a dead draw, and in this position, my opponent offered a draw, and I accepted because it's a dead draw. So, funny things about this game. I was pretty happy to be able to defend it. I did not deserve to. My opponent outplayed me the entire way. And I think part of it had to do with the type of openings I was choosing at the time, especially this this King's Indian setup against b3. I think I was too lax about it. Normally I'm happy to see the structure, like this structure that we're seeing right now, especially if they play b3 and bishop b2 and take on f6. All in the first 3 moves, they just give up a bishop. Generally, I was pretty happy to see that, but we really saw some of the weaknesses of this type of situation, or of this position for black if we're not active. And I think here, again, going for d5 is actually so important. It might not look like it, but this is just a world of difference, because here we don't have to worry about having like a isolated pawn on d5, which was a huge worry of mine in other variations. Like, let's just say if we go all the way back and into the game, I never wanted to play a move like d5 if I got it here, d4, d5, because if we enter a position like this and I just have an isolated pawn, this feels very bad. Let's just say b4, just a move to think about. Followed by queen b3 or knight f4. That move can come as well, and it's getting extremely difficult to hold on to the pawn. So that was just kind of like a gut reaction of something I wanted to avoid, and that's why this d5 move was so important early on. If we see here, d5 takes. Although we have less pawns in the center, surprisingly, it does not matter as much. Let's just say knight f3, bishop g7, e3, castles, d4, c6, bishop like d3 or something, let's say. Now, although we don't have a pawn on d5, we also don't have a weakness. We have less space, which is also not something we necessarily love, but this feels just a lot more playable. We know what we're doing with the bishop. We know what we're going to do with the knight. We're not stuck passively defending something. So I think that was the most important thing that I learned from this game. And that, I believe, is all. So that was the first game back after, I think it was 3, maybe even 4 years of silence on the tournament front. But that was game number 1 of being back. And game number, I think, 63 overall. So I hope you guys enjoyed the draw. Hope it was interesting, and I will see you guys in the second game of this tournament. Have a good one. Bye-bye.